everybody. Welcome to a live demo on Automation Ladies. If you're joining us live, we are here on a Thursday afternoon, as usual. If you're watching the recording, then whatever day it is, happy Thursday or whatever day time it is for you today. Thank you for joining us. We have Courtney here with me today below, and Allie hopefully will be joining us shortly, unless you know how life in controls is emergency calls and all kinds of stuff that we don't always anticipate. But we're very excited to have Dan White with us from Opto 22 today. Hey, Dan, how are you?
Hey, good. Excited to be here. How you guys doing?
Very good. We're very excited. I think this is our first demo of its kind of a controller slash PLC, although I guess that's a point of discussion. Do you guys call it, what you call it, an edge controller? Can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to be looking at today in today's demo?
Right. So the GRV-EPIC or stands for Edge Programmable Logic Controller. We kind of created that acronym because it didn't, PLC or PAC or even IPC didn't really kind of capture everything that this device does. And so of course there's control, there's IO, but there's a whole lot more, and we'll get into that when we hit the demo.
Okay, so it's something akin to a PLC and an edge computer. But exactly. Sounds like maybe a little bit of best all-in-one kind of a situation.
Yeah, I've used the word Swiss Army knife before to describe it, but it definitely, we'll see, but it's got a lot of capabilities outside of just a traditional PLC or even a traditional IPC.
Very cool. Yeah, and I think this is absolutely a time where a lot of people are looking at what is kind of the new architecture. How do we get to more interoperable facilities and not be locked into these vendor ecosystems where software licenses and communication protocols and things kind of hamper getting everything connected and being able to enable digital transformation, as we've all been talking about now for decades. It's still a challenge in the industry, but and there's it's not like this controller is not new. It's not like this is a new concept. Opto 22 is not a brand new company, that's for sure. Although maybe there may be some people in our community that haven't heard of you by now, although I would be surprised. But can you tell us a little bit about the company? And I'll preface this with saying we were lucky enough to visit Opto 22 headquarters in Temecula, California last year. Allie and Courtney and I did. And Dan gave us an amazing tour, and a shout out to Arun Sina as well, who walked around with us and told us all about the company. And we were really impressed. We loved seeing the factory, the people behind it, the history. I know I took so many pictures of like your old ads and art and stuff like that on the walls. And I have a video that's almost done to come out from our factory tour there. But that I would love for the audience as well to learn a little bit more about Opto 22 as a company. And as you can see up there in the left-hand corner, and if you attended OT SCADACon at all last year or are seeing that around, we got some wonderful swag that said 50-year anniversary for Opto 22. So that's a big deal. You guys have been in the market for a long time.
Yep. So yes, we're in our 51st year now. And Opto 22 started with a relatively simple product back in 1974, the industrial SSR, and a patented methodology for making those that were essentially bulletproof. You'd fully potted with epoxy, and at that time, and even today, we were able to guarantee these individual relay modules for life. And so I think the theme that I think you'll sort of see as I go through some of our products and who we are as a company is it's all about sort of using commercially available, standard kind of openly available technologies, the best of breed that we can find out there in the IT space, and using those products in the OT space. So right back from, originally the solid state relay to kind of moving into, you see here our G1 and G4 family of IO. These were really primarily a PC-based platform. So you'd have, an old IBM 16 or 32-bit computer with a ribbon cable coming out of the back into an IO rack with these different black, white, red, and yellow individual single-channel IO modules. And at a time when there were PLCs available, but Opto came along, a company of engineers and innovative guys, and said, well, hey, these PLCs are okay in discrete control, and they do some things well, but nowadays everybody's getting these personal computers, and these computers can do all kinds of things, and you can program them in different ways. And so why not make an industrial IO platform that could be controlled by computers? And so really back then it was all about PC based automation. As we moved in through the 80s and the 90s, we had developed such a rabid following that eventually our customers would say, well, come up with your own controller. We're kind of a lot of the things that were great about the PCs in the early days sort of went away when you started dealing with Windows operating systems and registries and all of the IT and everything that goes along with running Windows machines and automatic updates and so on. So we came up with our own control platforms. We had the Mystic system, the Paymux system back in the 80s. And then when I got my first start with Opto 22, it was called the Snap Pack system. And that's what you see on the screen here. It was a rack mounted, we call a pack, not a PLC, because it didn't work the same way as a PLC. It wasn't just ladder logic programming. You could write flowchart programming. You could do scripted programming at a time when PLCs didn't really have that. And, it had file storage. You could read CSV files in and out. And some of those early, FTP server and things that, again, in the early 90s and, mid 90s, late 90s even, you didn't see that on PLCs, but it was widely accepted in the IT space. And so we found a way to apply it to the OT space. And that kind of leads right into the Groove family. We got started first with a kind of an add-on product called the Groove Box. And it was a way to take your existing, whether they were Opto Snap systems or even older legacy systems or other third-party PLCs, but it was a way to get all that data into one place and be able to start creating mobile visualizations and doing more, IIoT and digital transformation type projects. And that was really what led us into the inception of the Groove the Groove-EPIC family and the Groove Rio. It was this foray into a Linux-based control system, a Linux-based processor, and add that to, at the time, 45 years of automation experience, and we kind of rolled all that into a single product that had the best of both worlds. It still has guaranteed for life IO, carries a 2.5 year, 30-month warranty on all the processors, backplanes, and other accessories. So we stand behind the stuff even still with the Groove-EPIC family, and that's what we're going to get into the little demo today.
Yeah. I want to, I think this is part of the video, but we'll have some pictures as well. You guys have a whole wall in your office that's like all the legacy stuff, like the super old stuff, so that you can still be a resource to customers on that, right? Even 30 years later. It's crazy. It's very cool.
And I'm glad you brought that up too, because when you talk about my journey with Opto 22, actually started out as a customer. So I mentioned my initial foray with Snap Pack was working for an HVAC manufacturer, doing an environmental control lab, working on end-of-line test equipment, to pass and fail and qualify these air conditioning systems for the marine industry. And at the time, I remember, automation was just one small part of what I was doing in that role. I mean, I was also doing control panel design for the systems we built. I was, if the battery went out in the paper towel dispenser, they would call us because we were the only electrical engineers, just me and one other guy. So anything with an electron in it, they would call us. But what I remembered about dealing with Opto 22 then, from a customer standpoint, it was like, wow, these guys are different. You call the phone and a person answers. You ask for help, and the next thing you know, an engineer is calling you back and working through your problems with you, all without ever having to pull out a credit card or have a support contract. It was this idea that, they made their products, they stood behind them, they supported. It was the idea that the customer's success was just as important to Opto 22 as their own success. And in fact, it's integral to their success, to our success now. And so I had my flavor for Opto working with the Snap Pack systems from about 2006, 7 to 2013. And I'll shout out Arun again, because he was the guy that came into our facility at the time on kind of a routine sales call. But when we got to talking about all the different things.
Thanks for joining.
When we
Give him a follow, you guys, on LinkedIn if you don't know him.
Yes, Arun is my favorite. And so when we got to, oh geez, lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I interrupted. Now I'm gonna
interrupt
some more with Ryan Treese here saying Pac-Man.
Hey Ryan. So when Arun came in and I started getting into all the different things that we were doing with Opto, he took a step back and was like, wow, this is pretty neat. And it was at a time for me in my career where I was kind of looking for a change and looking to maybe take a foray outside of just, doing some engineering work behind the desk. And Arun tells a story like within 10 minutes of him getting in, he always says, I got in the car, I turned the ignition, and next thing we know, my phone rings and it's Dan saying, you said you were hiring? So meanwhile, but it's a true story. And it was really I had this great experience working with Opto on the customer side. And I even remember, God, I know I'm yammering on, but at the time that I went to Opto 22 for training, this was in 2006 when I first started that other job. I went out there, and my only girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife and mother of my kids, but she came with me. She was studying for her CPA exam at the time. She didn't have class and she didn't have a job, so she was with me. And I'd come back to the hotel at night and I'd go, God, I know I just started my job, but this Opto 22 company, there's something different. I love this place. Like, I want to work for them. She said, just shut up and get back to work. Like, that'll never happen. And I never thought it would. And then it all kind of fell into place in 2013 when Arun popped in.
Very nice. Well, it looks like Arun is not the only one here showing some support. So Ryan won a Groove Epic, if I'm not mistaken, at OTC
Groove
Datacon.
Rio.
Oh, Rio. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So another thing we'll learn shortly is the difference between those. Although I see it up there in the picture as well. And he is very happy with the support. I'm not surprised. And then we have, hey, Al French joining us. Thanks for joining us. Actively learning to use our Snap Pack in multiple facilities and just had one of those great calls with Arun last week. So yeah, lots of positive interactions and lots of positive word of mouth that we've heard about the company, which, I think nowadays, especially, not that it hasn't always been important, but we have like a deluge of digital information that we can get about products and features and what's the best specs. And that's part of it for sure. In technology, it's important to pick the right platform or the right technology. But at the heart of it all is also the people that you work with. And if you're lucky enough to be in a position where you can make some choices about who you work with in terms of companies or people, then, and I don't know if it's just me or if it's other people, as you get further along in your career, you start to realize that like the vibes matter. And they are somewhat of a predictor of your success down the line with a partner, whether that's a vendor, customer, partner, however that is. And most of us in this industry don't work alone. We work in an ecosystem, right? With integrators, contractors, manufacturers, customers. And that's something that's, Automation Ladies is important to us, and we really appreciate about you guys.
Yeah. And, it's a bit cliche because every company kind of says, we're a family here. And I've worked for enough companies and I've heard that enough times. And, but yet at Opto 22, it actually feels real. I mean, we're, like I said, we just had our 50th anniversary, and many of our managers are, on the back nine of their career, let's say, and they're starting to think about retirement and they're thinking about the future. And and I say, well, what's going to happen to Opto when you're gone, when you're gone, when you're gone? And they go, hey, another 50 years at least. So it's been really great to be a part of that kind of a company that isn't just all about making a buck today, but about building things that last. And I mentioned this on my Automate Live interview last week, but it's not just about building products that last. It's about building relationships that last, not just with customers, but with your own employees. And, that's a huge part of the way we do business at Opto. And we just celebrated another retirement of Bill last week, who had been with Opto for 30 years. And, most of our employees at Opto, more than half, have been with the company for north of 20 years. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. That says something. I mean, I came into my career in 2018 when everybody was just getting laid off everywhere. And I just had this immediate feeling that what I thought of as a career didn't exist anymore. Like my grandparents, they worked at and retired from the same place their entire career. And that just seems and feels unheard of today. Like it doesn't exist anymore. And then you come across those rare gems where it does exist. And you're like, wait, something is different here, right? You felt that. I not to diverge too much, but I started a new job at the end of beginning of this year with WinTech USA. which is the US company for a manufacturer of HMIs called Wintech Labs. And they've been around for 30 years. They celebrated their 30-year anniversary. But it was not the only opportunity I had, but I had a similar vibe about kind of the company and the people. And yes, I also generally see the word family when it comes to business as a red flag because it's too often, I think, used disingenuously, right? It applies to it applies to some things and not to others. And in a family, it's like, well, would you fire your family member if they made a mistake? Or because, the checkbook was low this month, would you just kick your kid out of the house? No. So don't call it a family if you're going to make decisions based on the bottom line only, which is what, generally corporations do. And it's understandable, but there is something different about running a business where the bottom line isn't your only stakeholder or the only thing that you're looking for. Right.
Right. And in 50 plus years, we've never had one layoff.
That's awesome.
That's something.
And Ali G's in the house now. And
Ali G's in the house. I didn't want to interrupt too much, but thanks for joining, Ali.
And I also want to jump over to the chat and mention to Kai Hennings that yes, Opto 22 is available in the EU. If you actually go on our website, you can find our international page where we've got international distributors. We've also actually got a office in Europe, in Germany. So that might be the first thing that comes. I'll have to pull it up here somewhere, but about us under corporate contacts, if you want to reach out to Gerhard in Germany, there you can find that right on from our About Us.
All right, thank you. I love this. So let's just get it done while we're on the live.
Yeah, I figured that's how it worked, but
yeah, no, I mean, we definitely don't guarantee that these produce any kind of any kind of engagement other than just content or people that are interested. They can come watch the demo later. One of the big things about why we do this is we want there to be more ungated content in the industry that doesn't require someone to jump through salespeople hoops just to be able to find out what technology is out there, whether it may be a good fit for them, that sort of thing. And so we started doing these, and companies are like, oh, it's not like a sales webinar where you might get 100 people register and you're going to spam them all with email after the fact. Like, we don't make anyone register and we don't email anybody. So, but what I think is very
refreshing,
cool,
though. I think we kind of approach it the same way. You want to, of course, you want to sell products at the end of the day, and you want to sell solutions, but you want to do it by teaching people, not just by being that sleazy sales guy that's out for a buck. Again, we're looking for long-term relationships with our customers and our partners.
Yeah. And supporting engineers, they don't buy on a whim, right? Like, if you have a project, you want to be thought of at the right time when the opportunity presents itself, right? So thank you guys for chiming in that are here. We'd love to see more comment. Frank Lamb. Hi, Frank. Frank is one of our speakers at OT SkaterCon as well, and an industry veteran that
you're there, Frank.
Frank has worked, I think he's worked with some of your stuff, but and then we have Giovanni joining us from Venezuela. Hi, Giovanni. Thank you. We're happy and excited to be training with the new learning center that we just received in Caracas, Venezuela. Yay.
Oh, great. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let me know when I can get into the fun stuff.
I'd say we're good to go. Let's go.
Okay. So first of all, you can see right in front of me here, I have a GRV-EPIC Learning Center. Also, if I switch views here for a second, you can see I've got an EPIC Learning Center over there on my credenza. As well as a Groove Rio. We can chat a little bit about what that is after, and a touchscreen monitor that's actually plugged right into the GRV-EPIC. But let me just dig in on this little guy right here. And first and foremost, kind of, we're hardware manufacturers, so I like to talk about the hardware. Yeah. So this is a GRV-EPIC. This is a 4-slot chassis. You can see I've got one empty slot on the end here, but 3 that are populated. This system can be 4, 8, or 16 slots. We even sell a 0-slot version. We talked a little bit about how it's not just a PLC, but in some cases it's an IPC, and in some cases customers choose to use it that way, and as an IPC, and don't actually need physical IO modules. So we'll sell it as a 0-slot, and it'll just look like this unit here, just the front envelope.
Oh, okay.
If every GRV-EPIC's got a color touch screen on the front where I can actually log in and access what we call Groove Manage. I'm going to, just so I'm not fumbling around too much here, and it's upside down to me anyway, I'm going to show you that on the web interface, because we've got that as well. But when I lift up that screen, you see all the hardware interfaces here. So I've got two USB ports, 2 Ethernet ports for network segmentation, as well as an HDMI output. And the unit over on my credenza was plugged into HDMI. This one's not. But and again, all the I/O modules, like I mentioned, guaranteed for life. The power supply sits right here underneath the processor. That's the GRV-EPIC hardware. I'm going to hop over here to my web browser now, and I'm actually just going to open up a blank web browser, and I'm going to type in the host name of this is the EPIC over there on my credenza. First thing you may notice, because I'm going to point it out, is that we have an HTTPS secure connection. That's because the GRV-EPIC does support all modern IT security, TLS SSL certificates. I've created my own in this case, assigned a self-assigned certificate to my computer. But you could do it, you could go to a GoDaddy or a certificate authority and do it that way as well. You'll notice I have to log in. All GRV-EPICs come without a username and password. There's no default. It's a zero trust model. So the first time you plug it in, you have to create that username and authentication and make sure you don't lose it, because there's no back doors. We knew that when we were developing a PLC, we wanted it to be able to sit right on the internet. And as you guys probably know, PLCs are typically the least cyber secure device on any network. And so in developing this product, cybersecurity was at top of mind. So
our friend Ashley Van Housen will be very happy to hear that. And I think she met up with you guys at the Prove It conference. And there have been some conversations, but I think it's apparent to all of us that this is something that is very important to you guys and built into the product development process and everything else.
Absolutely. Even, before I even get into all the other good stuff, you'll notice I have a button right here on the home screen for security, and that covers the certificates, both from a client or server standpoint. So EPIC can connect to servers securely, or EPIC can be the server that others connect to securely. Even the firewall, find me a PLC. I know there are some out there now, but at the time when we launched this, there wasn't a PLC on the market that had a configurable firewall where I could actually go in and specify which ports are open on which Ethernet interfaces and so on. So cybersecurity and security in general was a huge part of this design. And now getting back to sort of more of the traditional, what I like to call blocking and tackling, I/O and control. We've been doing I/O and control for many, many decades now at Opto. What's really neat about the GRV-EPIC's interface, and again, remember, all of this is available on this front screen as well. So I'm showing it to you here on the computer to make it easy and make it quick, but all of this is available. So if you're out on a plant floor or even somewhere in a mine and you don't have internet access, everything I'm showing you can be accessed right from this controller. So this is the EPIC over on my desk over there. You can see I've got 4 I/O modules plugged in. I can click in on those I/O modules and see the current status. I can even, if they're outputs, I can even toggle them on and off. All of the information about this module, from the wiring diagram to the specs to the details on the firmware and the date codes and when it was released, is all built right into this interface. So it's really a self-documented product. You don't need to go very far to get all the information about the EPIC. That's your I/O. On the control side, from a traditional PLC standpoint, we offer 2 traditional PLC programming options. One of those is called Pack Control. Pack Control, originally launched as Cyrano back in the 80s, is essentially Opto 22's homegrown programming platform. It uses flow charting with a mix of scripting, and it is unique to Opto 22, but we hate to use the word proprietary because we really will give you all the hooks to be able to do just about whatever you want within this software. Once we got to GRV-EPIC, and I mentioned earlier the Linux-based operating system, that opened up doors for us to offer other traditional programming platforms. And that was when we linked up with CodeSys. With that IEC 61131-3 suite, you can do all of the traditional PLC programming in here. So, as you know, we in the industry, we often go up against some big competitors. And many times, people are used to those softwares and they program a certain way. We wanted to get rid of that roadblock. So with CodeSys, we've got ladder logic, we've got function block diagrams, structured text, SFCs, really any way you want to program your EPIC. Beyond that, this is kind of one of those, with great power comes great responsibility. We also offer what's called a shell license. Again, operating in Linux, and we call it a our Linux build on the Epic is what's called a Yocto build. It's a custom Linux build that we developed for Epic. But within that, we can specify if we want to be able to allow you to run a Python compiler or C++, and we've got toolkits on our developer page that give you access to all that. So if you don't like graphical programming, if you're an IT whiz or a software developer, you want to write Python script or JavaScript or any programming language, C++ and so on, we've got all those toolkits as well. So it's kind of infinitely programmable. Before I jump into some of the visualization, some of the other stuff, I want to mention, regardless of what programming you're using, such a huge part of what we do today is about what we call data democratization, making data from this control system and even from other control systems accessible to any party within the business that needs it. And I see Ryan's chiming in about Docker. I don't have the beta firmware yet, but we do have coming up within the month, we're releasing our new GRV-EPIC 4.0 firmware, which will have Docker support. So you'll be able to do software containers and really load a lot of your. And Frank's chiming in on Node-RED. Wait for it, guys. Anyway.
Yeah, and then I also just wanted to point out that earlier, we had somebody asking about training, and then we had a member of the community answer the question about training. There's free online training on the website and an in-person factory training tour. And I recently saw a post about the training, and somebody was like, the best training I've ever had. So we hear good things about this factory training, and the fact that you get a factory tour and see where everybody is and where everything is made is probably a big bonus as well. But then having free online training, I think in this day and age is also probably pretty important. So thank you, Justin, for joining us and for answering the question. We really encourage our community to also network with each other, learn from each other. And, if you see somebody here that's in the comments on this today, I'm sure they're willing to connect or be followed on LinkedIn because you guys are clearly interested in the same thing, maybe work on some similar projects, or maybe, touch on different parts of industrial automation. And there's a lot that we can learn from each other by sharing our expertise, our experiences, and our knowledge in the community. And, it's not all about what is coming at you from our platform. It's also about, what you can get just from being active as well. And being here and being in the comments is a huge part of that. So thank you guys.
Yeah, we want to hear from you. It's customer projects, and I mean, I meet with customers all the time, and I go, "Wow, you're more of a whiz with this stuff than I even am." We work on it, we sell it, we talk about it, but once you start getting into those real applications, that's where the real learning begins.
Absolutely, and you obviously having that customer background. I think I love when you kind of have like multifaceted people that have been in different shoes in the industry, because every time you make that switch, you learn a perspective and you learn something that you didn't before, and then you can connect those together.
For sure.
And then I also just want to make a quick note. I use the term guys for everyone, guys and girls, guys and women. Some women don't like to be called girls. I don't mind that. I call us girls sometimes. We call ourselves the automation ladies. But I mean everyone in the community, no matter what you call yourself, I will potentially call you guys, controls guys, folk, all meant to be very inclusive.
Right on. So flowing into the demo a little further. So one of the things I mentioned was data. So it's all about getting the data where it needs to go. But some people want data in Modbus, believe it or not, still. So we've got that. But now we're starting to see more and more customers looking for MQTT data. So we've got a native MQTT data service that can work with both Sparkplug-B or string tags. We've got an OPC UA server running right on this device. So you can serve up your tags in pure OPC UA, no drivers required, right? We also have an onboard, and I'll find it here under info. We have an onboard API. So everything here within Groove Manage is accessible through this Swagger API doc. So many ways to get the data where it needs to get, and so on. And then I got to go through, I don't know how much time we have, Nikki, but I got to get through the rest of these tabs.
We've got another 30 minutes. So
okay, good. All right. So we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
So I talked about IO. I talked about control. I talked about, how to move data around. There's a lot of other tools on the GRV-EPIC. One of those, as Frank mentioned, is Node-RED. So Node-RED is this open source tool. I'm sure many people in your community probably are familiar with Node-RED, but it's an open source, environment that's essentially a graphical wrapper of JavaScript. So underneath the hood, it's all JavaScript, but within that, you've got what they call nodes, and these nodes can do different things. Like there are nodes that read and write to WebSockets or HTTP requests, or write to and from files or databases. You can see my influx nodes over here. You can also see here, we've created nodes. So Opto 22 has Groove read, Groove write, and Groove IO read and write nodes. So these nodes do various things. The pack read and write nodes read and write values from the pack control software. The Groove IO read and write and input will read directly from the physical IO points. And this Groove read and write node, actually, this is kind of where I'll segue into what we call Groove View. So the screen on the front of the EPIC or my web browser can all run a built-in visualization tool called Groove View. It's a great for heads-up displays, for viewing data both in a desktop or in a handheld type of view. You can create lots of different pages, and all of your devices you talk to, from your Groove EPICs to other OPC devices, other Modbus devices, and so on, can all be used in here within Groove View. It's certainly not a SCADA platform, and I like to be clear about that because it does some SCADA capabilities. Sure, you can do some supervisory control and even some data acquisition. But when you start getting into deeper SCADA enterprise level applications, that was when we decided to partner with inductive automation. And so every GRV-EPIC comes with Ignition on board.
Wow.
And in fact, the GRV-EPIC Learning Center comes with full edge licenses for running Ignition Edge and Ignition IIoT with the full panel license and so on. So,
and if I understand it correctly, you guys are the only hardware provider that provides native Ignition licensing with the hardware when you buy it.
I believe so. Yep. And so we get into these applications. Why would you? Of course, everybody knows, or most people are going to know, why would you want to use Ignition on your in your factory, in your plant, in wherever. But why would you want to run it at the edge is a question that we get a lot. And I always have in my mind, there's really three main reasons why I see customers wanting to use Ignition directly at the edge running on the GRV-EPIC. And there's probably 100 million more, but these are the big three. One is data redundancy. If you've got this thing running out at a remote site somewhere and it's collecting data and it's pumping that data up to a network operations center or to headquarters or to wherever, and you lose that remote connection, you lose the internet, or maybe it's a cellular connection or a satellite connection, you're going to lose your data for the most part. But with Ignition Edge running on board, you can do what they call edge sync, or sometimes referred to as store and forward. So all of the data running locally on the EPIC can buffer for essentially a full week. So if you lose your internet connection or anything like that, you're going to have your data and it's going to be bulletproof and it's going to be out at the edge. And then once the connection is resumed, it'll backfill and you get all the data where you need to get it. The other reason is Ignition. Okay, we talked a little bit about how PLCs aren't very cyber secure devices. And so this GRV-EPIC, though, it's got segmented network interfaces. And so a lot of times what we'll see is customers using one network interface to talk to a local plant-wide network that's a trusted network that's only got PLCs and frequency drives and maybe some plant computers and Modbus devices and so on. But you don't want that on the internet, because as soon as you expose all that stuff to the internet, now you're a cybersecurity nightmare. However, if you use the EPIC as your gateway, you can have all of that data being aggregated by the GRV-EPIC using a tool like Ignition. And you can see the driver libraries here, the Allen Bradley, BACnet, Modbus, Omron, Siemens, and so on. And then you can take your second Ethernet interface, we call Ethernet 1, 0 and 1. You can take that one and plug it right into your IT network, or DHCP, to a cell modem, to an IT network. And now you can specify, again, using onboard tools like a firewall, that I can say, I only want these ports open, or better yet, I don't want any ports open. I just want this device to publish data out. Now I can securely connect all of that data from all those devices to, wherever, to the cloud, to to the internet, to wherever I want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe the third reason that I mentioned is, you know, if you're just using a GRV-EPIC and you don't have all these third-party devices, but you want to do some MQTT communication, yes, we have a native driver on here, but Ignition's MQTT transmission module allows you to publish various different data sets to various different MQTT brokers. So I can say, okay, I want data A, B, and C going over here, and data D, E, and F going there, and data X, Y, Z going there. Ours is more of a one-to-one. It's not quite so feature rich. So that's a lot of what I see, you know, data redundancy, connecting third-party PLCs, or really taking advantage of this rich MQTT distributor module at the edge. Now, you don't have to run Ignition Edge. You can even run full Ignition on your EPIC. And, you know, we don't see it a lot, but we've got applications where customers are running Ignition right on the EPIC and saving data to a database right on the EPIC and using the EPIC like their own little SCADA server. And that can certainly be done for smaller applications. You just want to be careful, you know, when you're dealing with a quad core computer with, you know, 4 gigs of RAM, you don't want to be saving your entire factory's data into that. So
Yeah.
So that's, you know, IO control, visualization, of course, with GrooveView and also with Ignition. Now we'll be able, with the Groove 4.0 release, we'll be able to run Ignition perspective right on this screen. So you'll be able to also use Ignition. That'll be a fourth reason I'll have to add to my repertoire there, but you'll be able to run Ignition and run Ignition panel right on the GRV-EPIC. Or again, using the HDMI port here, plug it right into a touchscreen or a TV or monitor, and now you've got perspective pages right there locally to the device. And so that's everything. That's a lot about GRV-EPIC. IO control, visualization, SCADA tools, you know, IIoT tools like Node-RED. You know, we've even got customers using Node-RED as a UI interface, right? Node-RED has UI nodes. You can create pages in there too. So I don't know that there's any one customer using every toolkit, just like probably nobody uses every single flip on their Swiss Army knife.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the tools are there, and you know, that's GRV-EPIC. I actually wanted to shift gears just to kind of talk a little bit about the EPIC Learning Center and what's included with that. Should I just jump right in, or did you guys have any questions or anything?
Ali?
My only question was, or not question, but I guess comment. I can imagine like how easy it is to, because one of the things you struggle with, or at least that, you know, that I did when we were first doing controls, you know, or PLC programming, is like just getting the IP address on the PLC. And like, that is like, seems to be like too easy with what you've got going on there, with, especially with the screen there.
It's so funny that you say that. Like early on, that was one of the huge boons of this product was, wait a minute, I can program and set up my IP addresses without I was going to try to do it right here, but I'm upside down. But yeah, you essentially just log in once you've created your login, and I'll flip to I'll flip back to here for a second. And right on that front screen, you see a button, a blue button just like this. It says network, and you hit network and you hit configure. And there you are, and you can just.
That's as easy as an HMI. Like, that's why I've always liked HMIs, because you could actually like physically do it, and like you don't even need software. You could just come put an IP address on this thing with no software.
Yeah. And it's huge, especially on corporate networks where sometimes, you know, I mean, our older controllers would put out a boot P request, and then you'd have, oh, our DHCP server blocked all your boot P requests. And, you know, it was like, okay, well, you know, you'd always have that engineering laptop.
Address.
You always had that engineering laptop, the one that nobody knew about in IT, that you'd have to plug it in and get it going. And it was, so yeah, this makes that quite a bit easier.
I love it.
And then, yeah, shifting gears to the actual learning center. Here, I've got a tab right here. So what all comes with this learning center? So first of all, you can see it's exactly like the unit I have on the desk in front of me, although mine's a first generation. So the newer version actually comes with our multifunction module. So in addition to a digital input module and a digital output module, you've got the third module there that can be configured in a million different ways. And I always use, it's a lot like our Groove Rio. I always go to the Groove Rio, what we call our Explorer, because the Groove Rio is just a single remote IO block. But within that Groove Rio, you've got, you know, 10 IO points. 2 of them are just relay outputs. 2 down here at the bottom. But these other ones can be configured as, current input, voltage input, millivolt. I mean, you see all the different input types, or it could even be an output. And so as I go down the list, they change a little bit as I get to the second half here. You can see, all right, channel 4 could still be a voltage input, could be, a thermistor input, could be a thermocouple,
Wow.
could be a current output. So this thing can be configured in 100 million different ways. And that's exactly what the module is that we put on the GRV-EPIC. So it's our GRV-EPIC Groove MM1001-10. It's, like I said, 8 multifunction mixed signals and 2 relays. So you can go right into your EPIC and you can configure that thing. I mentioned I have an early generation EPIC, but I'll pop into my Rio here for a second, just so you can see how easy it is to flip back and forth between different IO types. I mean, it's just going into the IO and go, okay, configure this one, and what do I want it to be? And I'm off to the races.
While you're pulling that up, I want to show this comment. I don't know who you are, since the privacy settings just say LinkedIn user. But he says, you get an Ignition Edge license and it can run Node-RED. Take my money. I'm sure Dan would be happy to, or someone.
Yep, call us. So, here's an example of an IO point that's currently configured as an analog output, but all I have to do is click in here, and it can be a digital output, it could be a digital input, and it might change the way you wire it, but it ultimately, all the wiring is built right in here as well. So super easy. So on the EPIC Learning Center, you get one of these multifunction modules. You get the full briefcase. It's all fully packed, ready to go. It's all pre-configured and pre-wired, or I shouldn't say pre-configured. It's actually all pre-wired. So you've got your IO points, you've got some buttons, some switches, some knobs. You've even got the temperature probe down on the bottom corner there has even got a little resistor connected across. Where'd my screen just go? Uh-oh, can you still see my screen? That's weird.
No, we can still see it.
Hold on, I just lost power.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, David Turner, hey, thanks, David. It's Bradley Bick that made that comment. So Bradley, you'll be happy to hear, hopefully, that you get an opportunity to potentially win one of these learning centers at OT SCADACon this year. We look forward to you joining us.
We just fully lost a monitor while we were
mid-talking. Giovanni here says Ignition Edge check, Node-RED check. And now, do I need to change how? So this is another WineTech, WinTech, Fanuc, Fanuc, Codesys or Codesys, which I've always said Codesys.
They say they used to say Codesys, now they say Codesys. Codesys. Yeah,
okay.
I try to say Codesys now. Sorry,
yeah,
okay. I think I knocked the power cord up. Back to the Learning Center. So this little probe in the bottom right here even has got a resistor across it that's wired back to an analog output on the multifunction module, where you can essentially use it as a PID controller. So you can heat up the little resistor by applying a voltage, and you've got a temperature probe there, so you can do the whole PID. All of it syncs really nicely with our training. So if you go to, I'm going to start at our homepage so make it easier for people to find. Yeah. If you go to our support and you go to training, you'll see both links for our premium factory training, which is out at our headquarters in Temecula. And I think you toured the facility, but you didn't get to be part of the training yet. Mm-hmm. And we have the GRV-EPIC online series. So this is a completely free online training that goes through all of the different tools that I just showed you. And it really works seamlessly with the GRV-EPIC Learning Center. It's sort of designed around these learning centers. So everything from setting up the hardware to creating programs in either Pack Control or Codesys, or doing some moving data around with Node-RED, getting into the Linux shell, using Ignition Edge for, to connect to PLCs within the Edge platform. So all of that is right in here. It's all free. Just create a SkillJar login, and you can then get in and start looking at these trainings. And many of them have videos, and they're completely top to bottom, really well done training. And so that's another tool. What did I miss? Training. So, once you get going with Opto and you're like, I need some help, check out our support. We have free product support. Like I mentioned, you can call and get a person on the phone. We have a million ways to get a hold of us. If you go right to our homepage, you'll see down here, I've got a little chat bubble in the bottom right corner. I can hit and talk to our engineers right through there. I can go to this support page to the training page. You go away now. And yeah, I think you'll find everything, any which way you want to use the products. We've got some great new websites here. This is the, what do you want to do with your Groove system? It kind of talks about all the different things, because you go through all these tools, and we face this a lot, especially when we're talking to customers, like, oh, it's got this tool, it's got that tool, it's got this tool, it's got that tool. And they're like, I'm just trying to automate this or automate
like, what do I need? Which one of these tools do I need?
What does it do? So this kind of gives you the
Oh,
idea
cool.
of what it can do: automate something, or connect remote assets, or turn data into actual insights of what's happening. You can actually, you've got our talk to an engineer page, which shows all the different ways you can get an engineer on the phone or on a chat or on our contact us form, or you can check out our YouTube page. We've got an amazing Opto video on YouTube with all kinds of great tutorials and ways to get trained up and learn how to use your GRV-EPIC. Everything from, tutorials on Node-RED, automation basics, learning about MQTT, learning about ignition, and video case studies. That's another great way to kind of see, well, what are people doing with all this stuff? If you go right to our product tab here, and I work on a lot of these case studies, you can see all the different types of applications from, this was a building chilling application. This was a commercial cryotherapy chambers, water applications, agricultural, electroplating. So this stuff goes everywhere. Anywhere you have an industrial type of process you need to control, we can be there. And beyond that, or just industrial processes that are already running that you want to get the data from, we can do that. And while I'm kind of shouting out some of the products, another great product is the Groove Rio EMU. It's just dedicated energy monitoring unit for 3-phase power monitoring for all the different reasons you might want to, lower your electric bill, or assign cost to a specific part, or be able to, monitor how a machine is running, machine health, all that good stuff. And that's kind of what we do at Opto.
Very, very cool. I think we've blown some minds today, which is cool. I wasn't sure how much everybody that we know knows about you guys already.
I learned stuff.
Yeah. So I want to throw up a few more of these comments. Thanks to inductive automation, the EPIC Learning Center also comes with a full Ignition Edge panel license.
That
Learn
is true.
by doing. Absolutely.
When did that partnership happen?
Albert says, data sheets, page 1 title, page 2 wiregram, page 3 support phone number and pronunciation guide. I think that's to point out the fact that you guys really do put support stuff everywhere. Like, there's so many different ways to contact you guys.
Yeah. Funny enough, you asked about how the relationship started with inductive automation. And Benson would tell the story much better than I would, because I believe it was Arlen Nipper, a co-inventor of MQTT and owner of Cirrus Link Solutions, who make the MQTT modules. But he went to them and said, you guys got to check out this ignition stuff. It's amazing. And I know during COVID pandemic, I actually went and got certified in ignition. I said, if we're partnering with these guys and we're using this software, I want to see what it can do. And that was one of the best trainings that I had ever. I know people are always touting our training. That was an amazing online training. Never spoke to a person, just went through the whole thing and got my credential. And so what happened, a lot of it in the early days had to do with, again, going back to that idea of democratizing data. We had this control platform, but it was, how do we make this data accessible? And at the time, they were some of the only other people talking about MQTT. And furthermore, they had a platform that could run on Linux. There's other OPC platforms out there that could communicate to our device and communicate to other devices and allow us to sort of be a gateway. But without mentioning any names, nobody had a Linux platform at the time. They couldn't run their OPC platform in Linux. So then we started getting into looking at Ignition and going, oh, okay, we can use their OPC server as a way to talk to third-party platforms. And we can also use their MQTT transmission to be able to then take that data and securely get it wherever it needs to go and start acting more like an edge gateway. And that was really the beginning of the relationship. It only blossomed from there when, that was before Perspective, which is inductive automation's web-based visualization within Ignition. That didn't even exist at the time, or it might have been in development. And so that was kind of the beginning of it all, was having something that could talk OPC, that could run on the Linux platform. Oh, here we go. This is Benson. We started working with IA in 2017 and the first to embed Ignition Edge on our hardware. Yeah.
Thank you for chiming in, Benson.
Benson in the house. Benson, while you're there, what else did I miss?
Well, we had another bout of question and answer in the
great.
in the comment section, which I appreciate, which is, can the EPIC communicate with existing SnapPack systems for use as an HMI?
Oh, absolutely. Without question, natively.
Absolutely. And whoever this is, thank you. I'm sorry I can't see who you are. I do that at home. All SnapPack IO connected to my EPIC.
Oh, that might be Benson because I know
It's probably Benson.
Oh, and all that. I don't know why, Benson. You're just coming in as a LinkedIn user, but
yeah,
nice
from what we understand, it's some privacy setting on LinkedIn that makes it so we can't in this platform see who you are.
Gotcha.
And I guess there's a number of people today that have that designation, so it's hard to tell. Justin, you can buy a second EPIC and use it as remote IO. That is also true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Arun chimes in here.
I got my whole team on here. Look at this.
Yeah, that's our favorite. Also, like bring them in because we can't always answer all the questions in the stream. Depends on like how long we go and if we have enough, Q&A time and stuff. So I always we didn't do as much prep for this as I probably on a normal week when I didn't lose power and that sort of stuff. I should have told you guys, but you get the drill. You guys already are on that wavelength without us even having you say, bring your people into the comments to answer questions.
So what Arun is mentioning here is, when you do have an EPIC, and I'm going to click back on the homepage here and show you, if I click on the EPIC itself, you can see this is the largest GRV-EPIC rack. And so, believe it or not, though, there are, I'm sure you believe it, there are many, many applications where your IO counts are much higher than 384, which is the max 24 per module, 16 modules on a rack. So if you need additional IO for your GRV-EPIC, yes, you can use legacy Snap systems, no problem. The native, what we call Opto MMP, they speak together the same language. You could also add another GRV-EPIC rack. Now, actually, let me say first, you could add a Groove Rio, but a Rio is a small device, so it's only got 10 points. So when you start getting into, well, I need another 100 IO, you don't want to necessarily get 10 more Rios. That's not going to be as economical. So you may go, I'm going to get another EPIC rack. Today, our solution for that is get another EPIC rack. In the very near future, the solution for that is we're going to have an EPIC rack with a processor on the face that doesn't have a touch screen, that isn't the full GRV-EPIC quad-core ARM-based architecture. That's going to be a simpler version of just an expandable IO rack. So that's coming out soon. Frank mentioned IO Link. Frank, great question. We don't make IO Link modules, but we've got plenty of customer applications where we interface with IO Link. So using CodeSys, you've got drivers in CodeSys that can do EtherCAT, Ethernet IP, Profinet, all the big Modbus, of course. And so the case study that Renee just linked there is a really neat one. It's a facility where they had to completely re-outfit this facility with essentially a new chilled water system, but they couldn't run wires through the building because of the building code. It was an old concrete building, and they're like, you can't drill anything into this building. So the way they were able to do that was using IO Link sensors on each floor, and just with an Ethernet cable, which they already had some Ethernet capabilities through the floors, they were able to use all these IO Link sensors, and then they used the GRV-EPIC. And I remember one of their quotes was like, how the GRV-EPIC was able to just handle so many different Ethernet communications concurrently, right? So I've got this IO Link sensor over here, and I've got these VFDs over there, and I've got, an HMI or a display something over here. And all of that can be done, using the same Ethernet interface.
Very cool. Gene also suggested to Frank for EIP and EtherCAT, I usually just buy the SL. I don't know, what does SL stand for?
That would be, let me go to the CodeSys.
From CodeSys, as we run CodeSys on the device. So that's some sort of short
CodeSys
terminology
CodeSys offers driver libraries for all of that. So if I hit EtherCAT, for example, you'll see they have the EtherCAT this is probably the one he's talking to, EtherCAT Master SL. This is their full list price. Although any Opto 22 customer running CodeSys, you do get free CodeSys licenses with your controller, and any add-ons, we have a significant discount. So this is like under $100 for our customers if they want to add EtherCAT master capabilities or EtherCAT. Let me be clear. The software license for CodeSys is free. So you can run CodeSys on the EPIC. Software license is included. But when you want to add drivers, that's where you need to go look into their store, and you can see some of the different, Ethernet IP. They've got Ethernet IP, scanner, master. Scanner is like their word for master, and adapter is like a slave, to use the old master slave lingo, if that's allowed anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's questionable. We
Yeah,
try
we
to take
say master and slave.
We try to take all language with intent in mind.
Yeah.
So those of us reading these things did not come up with this architecture of using these words, and there's no bad intent for them, but it's some of these things, they're starting to get a little outdated in the way that
Scanner and adapter sounds better.
Yeah, sounds a bit better at this point. Again, we want to be inclusive and respectful of people, but there's this is also an industry where there's a lot of unintentional, I think, like just things the way they've always been done, and they don't always line up with the things the way they're done today. But so software library is what SL stands for. I learned something today. Thank you, everyone. And then it would be, I think, we'll try to have a CodeSys demo on this season. I think that would be appropriate to get somebody over there from their group over here to talk a little bit more about their ecosystem in general. And sort of, I've been around CodeSys for a long time. I used to work for Festo, and they were one of the, earlier adopters of the CodeSys for their controllers. And I think a lot of smart companies have realized that, reinventing the wheel when it comes to a software programming, PLC programming languages and so on, having a proprietary IDE is not necessarily the way forward.
Right.
Boss minion. Yeah, that's another one. Good one.
I didn't mention before, but I'll mention now, the IO are hot swappable on EPIC. So if for some reason, we guarantee them for life, but if for some reason an IO solid state IO module failed, you could just unscrew, remove this connector, pop the module off, put a new one in, and reconnect it. And so you don't have to restart the system.
Very cool. Well, we've got about
base
3
price
to share. So what questions do you have, Ali?
What's the base price for like the 4-slot, chassis? Or I mean, I guess, just kind of talk about, because I was looking at the pricing, and the pricing is amazing. But I want you to kind of share that. Look at that. Oh my God.
So we do publish pricing on our website. There are 2 versions of the EPIC processor I mentioned before. The one I have is the PR2. It's got almost 4 gigs of RAM, additional hard disk space, primarily for applications where we do want to run Ignition, because Ignition is a little bit heavier on the software memory standpoint. The PR1 would be great for any type of traditional automation application where you weren't running Ignition. And so $1,675 is the list price for a PR1, and $2,375 is the list price for the PR2. Of course, actually, this leads me into another cool part of our website, which is our system configurator. So if you wanted to create your own Groove EPIC system, and this is you just said, if I had a 4-slot system with a Groove EPIC, let's say a PR1, assuming I don't need the extra capabilities, I can choose software licenses here. CodeSys is free. The shell licenses are free. The Edge license is an add-on, so I'll leave that off for now just to get more of a pure hardware price. 3 different choices for power supply. You've got your pass-through, which is essentially a 12-volt supply. If you've already got 12 volts available, that's what the EPIC is running on, so you can just bring that right in. It's a little bit less expensive than the AC or the DC version. Most of the time I see customers choosing the AC version, which takes 110, or European 220, 230. And then, of course, you select your IO modules. IO modules can vary wildly in price depending on what they do. Some of the more simple, like a traditional digital input module with a very simple set of features would be like that. So if that's one too many. So if I were to put up that whole system right there, you can see this one would be $34.98, and that's full list price
Wow.
that anybody could go on our website and purchase this for. Of course, we do have relationships with resellers. Here's a question. Can you add the Ignition Edge license later or afterwards? Yes, you can add the Ignition license at any time. So if you decide later, hey, we do want to use Ignition now, you can throw that back in. You can purchase that directly through Opto or from Inductive Automation or one of their resellers as well. We treat Ignition on the Epic just like anybody else would treat Ignition on any other device. So it's the same licensing. You can buy the licenses wherever licenses are sold.
Okay.
I got my whole peanut.
Is there anything you didn't think of? I like this.
Yeah. So
this is Ryan Treese. What's up? If we're all here, who's manning the store? Yeah, who's answering the phone, guys? You say you pick up. Let's all try it right now.
okay. Here, let me check.
I'm going to get a chance to meet Renee in Las Vegas, actually, in a few weeks, in the middle of June, I think, for a conference called Hexagon Live. So excited to see you there.
That's really funny. And by the way, look, so at least if you can see my screen still, Justin is still there.
All right.
All right. Are we pricing on the website is very unusual. Yeah, I remember thinking that was different too. Most places they'll put out some crazy price, and go, oh, but if you're a customer, we'll give you 50% off of that price. For the most part, the prices on our website are what people pay. I mean, pretty much all of them are fair prices. So yes, if it's a volume application and you're doing, and you tell me I need 100, I'm sure we can sharpen the pencil a bit. But for the most part, this is what customers are paying, unless they're high volume resellers or, partners that are, OEM partners that are purchasing and using a lot of product, year in and year out.
Those are great prices, especially for the capabilities.
I think it's very nice to just have fair and transparent prices. It's a real challenge, especially for smaller companies getting started, when they have to work their way into a quote unquote good price by buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of product at a bad price, or a price that kind of punishes them in the market, especially if you're an integrator or someone that's not trying to make a huge margin on the hardware, or you might be, maybe hopefully you're entitled to make a little bit of margin on the hardware. It depends on what you're doing and how much value you're adding to a customer, right? But
absolutely, I believe that any systems integrators out there who are thinking, hey, this looks really cool and I might want to use it, I absolutely agree with you, Nikki. There is a small margin for customers that are even just buying a system or two, but if they're a value added reseller, right? So they're not just buying it and selling it, they're actually going in and engineering it and helping their customer create a solution out of it. There is additional margin there for them on that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's great to know. Yeah. So smaller SIs, can reach out to you guys.
Absolutely.
I love that. And then just being able to at least go to your website and get a ballpark and know, where you're starting at.
Yeah, that's huge.
And sometimes you just need to get one and do a small project, and even just the hassle. And that's, again, one of the reasons why we want to do these demos, right?
So
it can be very difficult sometimes to get to being able to hand somebody your money for a product in this industry.
Let's also mention that one lucky systems integrator is going to go home with one of these GRV-EPIC learning centers at OT Skatacon. So
yay!
Hell yeah.
We're really excited to be able to be a part of it and to be able to offer, this is, really our premier product. This learning center has everything you could possibly need to, even if you aren't, an automation pro, it's got everything you could need to get started and get learning about, what we do and how to automate.
And we certainly hope that whoever does win that also maybe gets the opportunity to attend the factory training class. I think that would be kind of the 1-2 punch to really get them
just call me. I know a guy. We'll
okay. I think we know some people. So absolutely. And then of course, and the other thing is people do have, they may not be able to travel for a few days out to a physical facility during a specific time. So having the access to the free online training Just like I've heard, like you said, inductive university is one of the coolest things that, we've seen in terms of just the accessibility, right? Even if you don't have a job using it yet, you can go get credentialed, you can go, get trained.
I think that was a game changer for Ignition, and like that, is carried over into this, which is allowing technicians and engineers to come learn for free. Is, that's not how it always was. And Ignition got huge, I think, because they did that. And following in those steps, like, I think is the absolute best move to get this, into as many places as possible, is to just give it to the technicians and the engineers, at least the training of it, for free.
Yeah, and the whole 2-hour free trial mode, right? So even if you purchase an Epic and you maybe don't license Ignition right away, you can absolutely get in there and start playing with it, figuring out what you can do. Mine, I believe, is licensed. The one I've got running on this Epic is licensed, but if it weren't, you could just go in and reset that 2-hour clock and get going.
I love that.
Okay.
I think the engineers will love that too.
I think that is, we're a few minutes over, but I think a few minutes very well spent. And I appreciate all of you guys in the comments. It is what makes this a lot more interesting than just sitting there. And, webinars I think are great in some cases, but to me, the reason I don't love them as much is because I generally feel like they're oftentimes are a technical topic disguised as a sales pitch. Or, I mean, I guess the other way around. Depends. But then you just sit there for an hour and kind of get talked at. And I feel like this breaks it up a little bit. I don't know, we don't all have ADHD. It's an actual medical condition that some people have, some people don't. But I think in this day and age, we have shorter attention spans, and being able to relate things as we're learning can help the information stick. So I find this format to be extremely helpful, to be able to talk to people about what we're seeing, answer questions, have a little bit of fun banter. And that helps me, kind of retain what I've learned. It connects me also to, you don't always retain everything you learn in a training, but you probably remember the person that you can go back to. Or now you have a great, should connect with all these people from Opto 22 that were here in the comments. Follow them, connect with them. Renee covers the Pacific Northwest for sales. So if you're in that area, reach out to him. And where else should people be going other than your website, or to reach out to you guys on LinkedIn for any next steps, either now or if they watch this later and they're interested?
No, I would go right to the website. If you're ready to chat, go right to the chat. If you want to contact us, you can hit up our contact us page. And there's, like I showed you, only 100 different ways to get a hold of us through here. So wait, contact us. There it is. And then my personal favorite is the talk to an engineer. That's something where, again, I always felt like we were different. Like, you try to call a big automation company and get an engineer on the phone, you'll be whipping out your credit card and buying some contract. And no, come to our, the person, Justin, who is answering my chats. He's an engineer who's in his own right has developed custom refrigeration applications with our products. He's got a great feel for code sys and pack control and all the different tools that run on Epic. So these are real engineers that are here waiting to talk to you and help solve your problems. So come check us out online.
Very cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Dan. Have a great day.
Nikki.
We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys. Yes, we will.